Professor Konyinsola Ajayi, SAN, who is ably represented this morning by Mr. Michel Agatise, Senior Advisor, please keep clapping, and Team Lead at Olaniwu Ajayi, LP. And he will be speaking to us about standing out and going global, the fundamental truths for the lawyers of today and tomorrow. You're welcome, sir.
I think walking through the campus, I can attest that it is one of the most beautiful campuses that I have seen. And I think it is therefore fitting that Professor Konyinsola Ajayi, SAN, my boss, actually went to Obafemi Awolowo University. Then it was only known as the University of Ife. And if anyone follows social media, I think it was about a month ago, he posted his matriculation picture when he was then a Jambite, albeit the fact that that was before Jam, and to then see the extent of a career that has been shaped from the halls of this institution. I think if I was therefore an alumni of University of Ife, maybe I may have sang the song as spiritedly as she did. So Professor, it's also great that we have a member of the academia from Ife here. Thank you very much for all the work you do. Now, the topic that I have been given, and while we wait for the slides to come up, is going global. And I think it's a fitting topic for us to have here today, and a fitting topic for us to have here in the University of Ife, Obafemi Awolowo University. And the reason is very simple. If anybody follows the presidency, right, you would have seen that about a few weeks ago, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, had posted a congratulatory note about a young Nigerian lawyer, Tolu Obarumo, who just became a partner at White and Case. Now, the practitioners in the hall know White and Case, but for many students who may not know this law firm, it is basically one of the global institutions that generate so much revenue and has been consequential in most of the global affairs. But this is not about White and Case. This is about the fact that Tolu was actually a student of Obafemi Awolowo University. And the fact that he was a student is not the fact that he was a student in Professor Ajayi's time. Tolu was a student here early 2010s, thereabouts. So it means therefore that a Yinka in the audience, a John in the audience, a Eunice in the audience, a Comfort in the audience, tomorrow could in fact be such a global icon from these same halls. Now, I'm sure someone here has to pay me for all I'm saying about the University of Ife, so that's the last I'm going to say about the university. So let's get straight into the heart of the matter. Now, the first theme that Professor Ajayi wanted me to speak about today was that before you get into a conversation about going global, the question is then, where is global? Global is not a place. What we have come to accept or know or view as being global is actually work that people have done in their locales, and the whole world has come to attest that it is of a global standard. So, I would like to borrow not from law, but from chess. A few of you may know a young individual. I'm not going to say his name. I would like someone to echo it if you know it. And he recently broke the Guinness World Record for the longest chess event. Absolutely. Now, what was critical in what he said was that he had this idea in the slums of Ajayi and took a bunch of kids and basically started teaching them chess. He taught them chess. He taught them chess exceedingly well. And so much so that he has gotten global platforms from teaching chess in Nigeria. A few months ago, he was at the United Nations speaking about his transformative work in teaching chess. Now, this man did not fly to New York to get the idea to teach chess. This man did not say, no, I need to get to London in order to start this initiative. He did it here. But this is not an advocacy for staying here. It is instead an advocacy for the standards you apply wherever you may be. Whether you are here in Obafemi Awolowo University or you are somewhere else in Harvard or wherever, the question is whether you have global standards in the locale that you find yourself. I'd like to give another story. There's a young chap. His name is Timiju Opelo Alufa. He used to be an associate in Orlando Ajayi where I work. And he posted recently on LinkedIn. He's currently at Harvard undertaking his LLM. He just commenced a few weeks ago. And on LinkedIn, he posted that when he joined Obafemi Awolowo University as a first year, he wrote his goals out to himself. He was so scared of those goals that he could not disclose it to anyone. But one of the things he had written in there was from Ife to Boston. And that with the foundations that this university gives him, he's going to end up in Harvard. Well, I'd like to say that he's still going through Orlando Ajayi LP. I see Bama Digodalo smiling at me. But the critical thing there is that the decision was made while he was here. While he was in the basement, he didn't have the press boards to look at anymore. But while he was here, he was able to open up his mind as to the possibilities that the world offered him. So that leads to the first thing in this session. And the first thing in this session is really about tailors. Someone will be like, what? Tailors? I thought this is a law program. But hear me out. At the end of the day, the career you're trying to put together is a piece of fabric. Everyone here is given a piece of fabric. But what you decide to do with it is actually the work of seaming it together. And that will determine whether, with the same fabric, you have a suit that could potentially be on the Italian fashion shows, or you have a suit that cannot go beyond the Ocean River. It's really about what you add to it. And what you add to it is not dependent on where you're found. What you add to it is dependent on you. So I was saying that it's about you being the seams master, the seamstress, putting together that fabric in what you want that whole to become. So therefore, if we can borrow that lesson from tailors, all of us are lawyers. The law is our craft. You found yourself in Obafemi Awolowo University today. You have an anthem that talks about globe, because you talk of yourself as being the only great Ife in the universe. Those are lofty ideals. But the question for you, therefore, as a young Yinka, is that are you going to be a Yinka that people will say this is worth reckoning with in the whole universe? The question that arises for you as a young Comfort, Toby, Emeka, is whether or not you are going to accept the standards that you do not like about the locale you find yourself, or whether you're going to adopt the standards that the globe offers you, and then utilize those standards so much so that the world becomes your oyster. Today you have firms like Bangwani Gondalo, Templars, Alupando Yubodi, that global directories say that these guys are best in class for things that are complex, that otherwise people would otherwise thought this is not the preserve of people from these parts. It's a question that if you want to be global, the starting point is your mind. When you're provided with this fabric, you are your own master of that destiny. And what you want to achieve with it is down to you. So I'm going to give you a few examples. And this part of the session, he calls it is staring at the mirror. What do we face today? What is the situation today? What are we facing today? Number one, as it relates to academia today in Nigeria, you're faced with a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you're faced with possibly some of the finest lecturers that Africa has. But on the other hand, even those lecturers recognize that there are limitations in the system arising from underinvestment in that system. I gave you an example of someone that was in your school just 2018, 2019, and is in Harvard today. The question for you is whether you're going to be a sub story and 15, 20 years down the line, you would say, oh, I would have had a fantastic career, but the government did not invest in my education. And as a result of that, I have been stuck in this situation I am. Or you are like what those motivational speakers will say, that when life fills you with lemons, you make lemonade out of it. That's the first thing. The second thing is that a lot of you very soon are going to end up in practice. And in practice, Mr. Chinedu is not going to employ all of you in Power and Godalo, even though he would like to. But there is going to be a filtration system. And because there's a filtration system does not mean that people who don't get into Power and Godalo are not the best lawyers. It just means that not everyone will have that opportunity at the start. There are people that I spar with today in complex arbitrations that may not have started their career in tier 1 law firms, but they continue to build that global relevance, even though they were in Ife, they were in Kano, they were in Ibadan. So much so that very soon people recognize that we're doing ourselves a service not to get these guys on our side because they continue taking us to the cleaners. In similar fashion, in many of our firms, I mean, DOA is here, Chika is here, they are doing mandates that on the other side are global law firms. Clifford Chances of this world, Hogan Lovers of this world. And when they are in those meetings, they're not going into those meetings and saying, oh my God, Clifford Chances is here, let's back down. Despite the fact that they're out of Lagos, they're taking these guys to cleaners. So the second important thing is that wherever you are, it's about what you're bringing, what you are, and what you are representing. Because remember my point about the tailor? We're all dealt with the same fabric. Whether you be in Paris, whether you be in London, whether you be in New York, whether you be in Lagos, we are all dealt with the same fabric. The third thing is the fact that wherever you find yourself and whatever you find yourself to do, you have to do it very well. And we have another real life example. A few days ago, someone came to talk to us in our office. Her name is Professor Ruth Okedu. If you can look her up, you should. She's a professor at Harvard. She's one of the most senior professors in the law school in Harvard. You may think to yourself that, oh, she's just of Nigerian origin. But she went to the University of Jos. Yeah, she went to the University of Jos, and she's one of the most senior lawyers in Harvard. She told us how she ended up in IP. And her story was very, very interesting. When she was in Jos, she was planning what to do for her dissertation. And she didn't know what to write for her dissertation. And she had a lecturer who told her that, well, if you're struggling, go to my office. I have a stack of papers and read through those stack of papers. So she went to the man's office. She didn't just do eye service. She actually took those stack of papers. And what she says is that weekend she didn't go out. She just read through all these papers. You know, many professors will have had the opportunity to go for lectures, conferences. So that's the stack of papers I'm talking about. And one of those papers had to do with technology transfer to African countries. And this was 1987. At this time, the discipline of intellectual property law was not what it was today. In fact, the coinage of IP law was not a thing. So she did the dissertation. She then, on the basis of that dissertation, applied to Harvard, got into Harvard for her LLM, then her JD and the like. But when she got there, what was more critical was there was no course in Harvard on IP law at the time. So she started doing courses related thereto and remained very true to this area that she felt she was being called to do. While she was doing this, all her friends were going to the top law firms, but she really wanted to remain welded to this area of law. So she continued doing it. She was very poor for about 5 years. And sometime in 1993, if anybody follows IP law, there were the World Trade Organization rounds of 1993. And all of a sudden, IP law exploded. And they were looking for experts. And all of a sudden, she became the leading voice on that issue globally. Today, she's written the IP and copyright laws of, I think, about 15 countries who call her to consult. But what's the critical lesson there? The critical lesson there is that you have to stay true when there's no celebration. You know, a lot of people will tell you now that, oh, you just go to LinkedIn, just talk about yourself, etc. But there's also a time for building, so that when the time calls and you're called for as it relates to what the substance is, you can speak to it. Now, the fourth point is about the fact that, and as many of you may know, the current debate is about whether AI is taking our jobs, and whether or not by a year's time Pamela will have a job, or AI will be doing the job for her. Some have said whether education is still relevant, or we just get AI to teach us the whole curriculum. But Professor Ajayi's point that he asked me to say was that, well, there have always been disruptions. And this is likely to also be very disruptive. But who is going to be disrupted are the people that choose not to become tech enabled, as against the fact that you want to remain limited to just using papers, limited to the way you've always done the practice of law, limited to the way of just rote memorization. But beyond that is the fact that you have to look beyond that and see what is AI doing for us today, what is technology doing for us today, because it becomes the leveler that we all see. I think the final thing he wanted to leave you with are 5 truths he said that are critical. The first thing is not that innovative. The first thing is that there are old, battered paths that remain true today. Those old, battered paths are the paths of diligence, are the paths of integrity, and are the paths of character. And many of the times, those paths are formed in university. His point to you today was that what you're learning in class today on contract law and tort law is fantastic. But when you're going into your interview, nobody really cares whether you remember part number XYZ of NWLR law reports. What people are seeing is whether you imbibe the discipline to be able to stay with the law, to be able to stay with books, to be able to find solutions. That process, not the results. Because it's that process we rely on when you come into practice. It's that process we rely on when there are novel mandates that are brought to us that nobody has done before. At that point, you are not going to say, oh, we did not learn this one in school. It's about whether or not you imbibe these lessons of research, of diligence, of character that those were supposed to teach you. That's number one. Number two is, and I think I've repeated this quite significantly today, global standards, there is no place called global. Global standards are found where you are. And it's a decision for you to make as to whether or not you want to be a global person playing within the field you play, or you want to continue to accept what is just there. The third point, I said there are 5 things. The third point he said I should also make clear today was the fact that the license to practice is not the call to pass certificate you will get when you're done with law school. The license to practice is continuous learning. And I'm actually glad that Mr. Tobena Arintoko is in the audience today, because this was something he championed when he was at the NBA. And why is the license to practice continuous learning? What you learned when you were in school, before you're out, the Supreme Court may already have brought a new decision that changes the dynamic. You cannot be telling your clients what was news 20 years ago. It has to be continuous learning because there are new fields that are starting out even as we speak. We spoke about AI. there are fields related to AI regulation that happen today. You cannot say, oh, I wish I went to school when we were teaching AI regulation. No. Continuous learning impels upon you to find that by yourself. That's truth number three. The fourth truth, he said, is that when you start practicing, before you go global, you have to be a master of the local. Because it's the local that gives you the relevance for the global. I was having a chat with Mr. Chinedu, a partner about what we did here. And he mentioned that one of the first arrests of a vessel in maritime law in Nigeria, he conducted that. Now, if anyone knows anything about maritime law, it is the case that those clients are international. So they will come to your locale and look for who understands and can perform at the same standard they're used to in the international global markets. So for you also, very much like my friend Timmy and who's now at Harvard, it's a case that look, you have to determine for yourself whether you're going to be someone that when you leave here 5 years down the line, you complain that you went to an institution in Nigeria, or whether it's the case that you then have those global platforms. I think the final point I want to leave with you was a point by both Prof and another good friend of mine in the office. His name is Isaac Ibikole. He was a student union president here in OAU. And he also went to Harvard, interestingly. And Prof went to Harvard. But the critical thing he said I should mention is that, look, at the end of the day, you're the master of your own career. You're the master of your own life. And it was interesting, I heard in your song, Aluta, against all forms of oppression. But those oppressions are not always governmental oppression. Those oppressions are sometimes the oppression of mediocrity. Those oppressions are sometimes the oppression of laziness. Those oppressions are sometimes the oppressions that try to keep you at the local playing level, whereas global beckons for you. So I leave you with just this word saying, come up with that. At the end of the day, going global is up to you. And as Ashake said, Nigeria boy, really go for it. Thank you very much.